I'm not looking to solve problems in Dallas or Washington, D.C. What is Austin's need? Let's fix that need and let's serve our families.
A statewide education crisis. Texas battles teacher layoffs, big budget cuts, and major threats to the classroom. It's a historic challenge for state lawmakers as Session 11 rolls on at the state capitol.
From KXAN Austin News, this is Session 11, live interactive breakdowns, insights, interviews, and our weekly roundtable discussion. You're watching Session 11 on KXAN Austin News.
Good morning, I'm Robert Hadlock. Today we explore the education emergency in the Lone Star State. Thanks for joining us for Session 11. We're live here in the studio with a heavy hitter in the House, plus our On Politics panel of experts breaking down the budget and what it means for your child's learning. This morning we have team coverage. Our political reporter Josh Hinkle is here to interact with you online. And first, though, we're going to begin with our education reporter Aaron Cargile joining us with more on this special school report. Aaron?
Robert, different school districts across the state are in different stages when it comes to preparing for the drop in state funding next school year. Austin moved forward, notifying staff members whose positions are likely gone. Other districts could soon be in the same boat. Rachel Zertucci is a new mom. Her son Lorenzo is just a month old. While on maternity leave last week, this Austin school teacher was sitting down when she got the bad news.
Excuse me, what?
Rachel's principal was on the other line explaining AISD would eliminate her position as a result of budget cuts.
It's not the best time. I definitely upset. I start thinking about my child. It would be a different thing if it were just my husband and I.
With 13 years of experience, Rachel hopes she can slide into another spot that opens up, though the chances are slim. Right now, the district says it can only find places for 150 to 200 employees out of 1,000.
It is gut-wrenching. It is one of the saddest things you ever want to have to do as a superintendent, and we are up against the wall.
Austin superintendent reached out to city officials Wednesday who are trying to soften the blow. One idea, give the district a break on water and electricity bills.
In addition, there's a budget reduction.
Round Rock hasn't cut any jobs yet, but that was on a list of options parents, staff, and students had to consider in a community meeting as they tried to choose where to save money if the decision was in their hands.
This is great because it gives the public a chance to express their desires for the cuts in the budget.
It was no easy task for freshman Joseph Swan.
I'm trying to make as good a judgment as I can.
Even a 14-year-old realizes it's not just math, it's faces and futures at risk.
You find yourself getting sad, but I don't know, there's not really anything else I can do.
And for teachers like her who could be left without a job in the end, districts like Austin are working with the Texas Workforce Commission and the Austin Chamber of Commerce to help. Robert.
Aaron, thank you very much. Our newsmaker this morning is State Representative Scott Hochberg. He's a Democrat from Southwest Houston. He's the vice chair of the House Public Education Committee, and he also serves as chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Education. Good morning, and thank you for coming in.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. You represent, of course, the largest school district in Texas, one that's facing a shortfall 3 times what we're seeing here in the Austin ISD. Do you have any advice for superintendents and school boards across the state facing this situation?
Well, I would hope that they would look at their core mission first, frankly. I would hope that before we start talking about increasing class sizes or doing things like that, that we look at some of the things that we've held near and dear to us for a long time, number of coaches. I have a proposal to reduce the amount of testing, which will not save the state a lot of money, but will save school districts a lot of money, and I think actually will improve education. So I think not going for the simple answer, and really digging in and figuring out how to do this while best preserving services to students.
It's pretty obvious that new taxes are off the table.
Well, it sounds that way, although, the truth is that part of the reason we're in this mess is that there was a tax swap done a couple of years ago, and at that time, the school districts were ordered to reduce their tax rate, and were promised by the state that they would get the money to make up for it. If that money's not coming in, there are some of us who are questioning whether the law itself might require property taxes to go back up to replace the money the state's not providing, but that's yet to be seen.
You've been sitting in these committee hearings for all week listening to these problems. Committee members keep saying, don't tell us about problems, bring us solutions. What themes or solutions do you see emerging from these discussions?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about cuts this deep, I mean, if you think about it, this is $1,000 per student in K-12. This is about $30,000 per typical classroom. You can't do that in the amount of time we have between now and school starts in a rational, solution-driven way. You're going to see job cuts. This is a job-killing budget. You're going to see teacher cuts. You're going to see larger class sizes. And the cuts in K-12 are similar to the cuts in higher ed, where we're seeing, for instance, no scholarships, no state scholarships for any freshman coming in the next 2 years to a state university. These are the devastating cuts.
The governor is adamant about not using the rainy day fund. What's your position on using that fund for ongoing expenses like education?
Well, the rainy day fund is not an emergency fund as the governor calls it. The rainy day fund's really a recession fund. It was set up to force us to spend a little less money and grow government less when times are good, so that when times are bad, and we know those times will be here, that we have a reserve that we can use. So I think we absolutely have to use that, but that's only going to cover less than half of the deficit in this budget.
Republicans say that Congressman Lloyd Doggett from here in Austin is standing in the way of $820 million in new emergency federal funds for education. Are you encouraging Doggett to change his position and get that money down here to Texas?
I haven't had any discussions with the congressman, but it seems to me that when we're talking about a budget buster, you're talking about $800 million that Congressman Doggett is trying to put toward education and make sure it actually gets there instead of going to something else in the state budget. And you're comparing that with $11 billion that the governor's own budget cuts out of education. You know, I'm not sure here. I think it's pretty clear who's cutting the money for education.
You alluded earlier to the testing system here in Texas, changing that to maybe cut costs. Could you elaborate?
Well, cut costs and improve the outcome educationally. We know that what you know through common sense is that a student who does well in third grade on the third grade reading test has a 98% chance of doing well in fourth grade. We don't learn anything by putting that student through that test in fourth grade. So what I'm proposing is we test everybody in third, fifth, and eighth, and then in those intervening years, test and really focus on those kids who are perpetually left behind, who fall behind in fourth grade, third grade, and never catch up, who right now have been under the system. It'll free up a lot of teaching time. It will allow those students who wouldn't take the test to move on further and not be held back by that test. And it'll focus on the kids who ultimately become dropouts in our system as it stands today.
We got about 30 seconds.
Sure.
The moving textbooks to the digital age.
Yes.
That would save money.
That would save money. I've already passed legislation to do that. We spend about $1 billion every 2 years on textbooks, but in the current budget, there is nothing for textbooks, electronic or otherwise. So that savings has already been entirely taken without even buying the textbooks. We got a long way to go before we're back to where we even have money to do it digitally.
Okay. Representative Scott Hochberg of Houston, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Robert.
Good to have you here. Well, later here in our program, our education experts dive into the state's funding emergency. Josh is standing by live to take your questions for our On Politics panel. Josh?
Well, Robert, you can chat with us right here this morning by going to KXAN.com and clicking on the blue bar at the top. It will take you to our On Politics site, our special political site, where you can chat with us and leave questions and comments for our panel. Just check out our On Politics poll there this morning at KXAN.com. We ask, to save money, should school districts offer incentives for teachers to retire early? We'll share the results at the end of the program. Stay with Session 11.